Casey once before and did a presentation on bullet journaling, and I'm always happy to discuss. So I'm more than happy to be here again this evening and talk to you all about this tool and strategy that you can help to organize your life a little bit better. I have been using my bullet journal for almost 2 years now, and I am a huge fan, and I'm really excited to share with you all kind of the key aspects of bullet journaling and how it can help young people and adults of all ages and all different types of walks of life, but especially those with ADHD. So I'm excited to get started. So first, I'm going to go ahead and talk about what bullet journaling is on a grand scale. So it's a journaling method that utilizes bullet lists to structure your thoughts in a more systematic way. So bullet lists are used to keep track of tasks, events, notes, those types of things that come up that you want to keep track of. It was created by Ryder Carroll, who was actually diagnosed with ADHD when he was in elementary school. And he ended up developing this system when he was in college to help him manage some of his ADHD symptoms. He actually immigrated here from Austria in the early 2000s to go to school. And when he was in college, he realized that he needed dozens of notebooks to keep track of his extracurricular events and his personal life, but also all of his classes, and he was really struggling with it. So he decided to make this method to kind of work for him and help manage some of his symptoms of ADHD. And once he graduated college and started in the workforce, he showed some of his friends the method, and they encouraged him to share it with the world. So he published it in 2013, and it has become extremely popular since then. In 2018, he wrote a book called The Bullet Journal Method, where he breaks down kind of his strategies behind where the method comes from. And he also published a website called bulletjournal.com, which is where I got a lot of my information that I'll be sharing with you all this evening. And I would highly recommend it if you're interested after this presentation to start bullet journaling or look more into it. I would highly recommend giving bulletjournal.com a visit. So he says that the bullet journal is a way to track the past, organize the present, and plan for the future. And I think that is exceptionally true. It helps you, again, like look at what's happened before and what you can learn from and what you need to remember, but also deal with your daily tasks and things you need to take care of in the moment, and also plan for what's ahead. It's extremely easy to start. All you need is an empty journal or notebook and a writing utensil, and it's personalized to your wants and needs and kind of evolves alongside you. And it has many different uses. Like I said, I use a bullet journal and have for the past couple of years. You can track personal life events, doctor's appointments, things that you need to do around the house, family events. Can obviously be used for schoolwork because Ryder created it when he was in school, keeping track of assignments or reading that you need to do. I use my bullet journal a lot in my professional life. I will take meeting notes or keep track of tasks that I need to prioritize, meetings that are coming up. And it also has a mental health aspect. A lot of people in the bullet journaling community will create like gratitude logs or kind of keep track of their emotional health as well. So if that's something that you're interested in, a bullet journal can be utilized for that purpose as well. Like I said, it's become extremely popular over the past couple of years. So a lot of magazines and other news outlets have done some articles about bullet journaling, and Good Housekeeping called it equal parts day planner, diary, and written meditation, which I think if that's what you want to get out of your bullet journal, you definitely can. And like I said, it's become extremely popular on social media. I actually found it on Pinterest and Instagram, and that's how I initially got interested in it. So if you're looking for inspiration or want to learn more, YouTube, Facebook, Pinterest, it's all over social media. So I also want to talk a little bit about digital versus analog planning, analog being the without technology, so paper and pen versions of planning, and kind of address the question, is one better than the other? And I think my answer, my political answer would be, it kind of depends on what you're looking for. So why someone might do digital planning over analog is definitely the convenience factor. We're constantly surrounded by technology. It makes our lives a lot easier in a lot of different ways, especially with the pandemic that we've all been having to live through. And I wouldn't be able to be presenting tonight if we didn't have technology. And it's extremely convenient. Almost all of us walk around with mini computers as phones in our pockets or in our hands. Also, another reason why people might want to do digital over analog planning is legibility. When you're doing it on a computer, you don't need perfect handwriting or artistic skills. So some people are more comfortable with digital planning because of that. But analog has some advantages over digital planning as well. When you decide to do planning with a journal on pen and paper, you can engage with the page and unplug and kind of let go of some of those distractions that come with technology. If you're trying to sit on the computer and do work, you might have emails or other like social media notifications, all those types of things pop up. But when you're setting yourself aside with your bullet journal or other types of pen and paper, it's a lot easier to kind of let those distractions go and focus on what you want to do in the moment. There's also an efficiency aspect that comes with analog planning, because when you're online, you have all of that information that's accessible and that you can typically type out a lot quicker than if you were writing it by hand. But when you're doing pen and paper, you're kind of forced to reduce the information that you're noting or thinking of down to what truly matters. And also you can exercise your brain. Writing by hand actually activates more areas of your brain than typing, several studies have shown. And so that can lead to quicker and more accurate recall later and helping with your memory. So I definitely think there is room for compromise. I think that the paper and pen and analog version of planning can be used to, again, kind of engage a little bit more, unplug, rid yourself of the distractions in the moment while you're planning out what you need to do. But then you can kind of plug into the digital, more convenient factor of things, especially if you need to plan with other people. That's always a lot easier when you have technology in the equation. So I think there's definitely a place for both of them. So bullet journaling can help you go from being busy to actually being productive. A lot of us are extremely busy nowadays. We have a million things going on, but sometimes it gets a little bit overwhelming and it's hard to actually put pen to paper and be productive and get things done. So Ryder Carroll, the creator of the bullet journal, did a TED Talk in 2017 where he talked about this a lot. And he talked a lot about decision fatigue, especially being a young man with ADHD. All of us have about 500 thoughts in a day. And a lot of those thoughts are decisions that we have to make. And those can be bigger decisions like, what am I making for dinner? What route am I going to take home? Those types of things. But then they can also be smaller decisions like, in this moment, what am I going to start working on? And how much time am I going to spend doing that? And those little decisions that we make throughout the day really add up to, at the end of the day, how productive we were. And all of the decisions that we have to make can lead to decision avoidance, anxiety, stress, and a state of being constantly functionally overwhelmed, or sometimes even dysfunctionally overwhelmed if we're not being as productive as we want to be. And so keeping a bullet journal and using that as a way to kind of organize your thoughts can help you practice mindfulness. Because using a bullet journal, you can kind of have that as an external hard drive for your thoughts almost, and dumping everything out onto a page and then reflecting back at the end of the day about the previous notes that you took and kind of what's important and what is more of a distraction. Ryder Carroll also talks a lot about creating mental inventories with your bullet journal. So kind of separating out of all of the thoughts that you have and all of the things that you have to do that are keeping you busy, what is absolutely necessary? What do you need to do? What should you do? And what do you want to do? Because those three subtleties, I guess, can be really important distinctions, because I might really want to do something, but I don't really need to do it. or I might not want to do something, but I should do it, you know, and I guess just parsing apart what things you really need to do and the things that really matter can help you be more productive throughout the day. Also, he talks about making manageable goals and taking actionable steps toward those goals. A lot of times when we're busy, we can get really overwhelmed by those daunting or really like big picture projects that we have. And so instead of looking at those for face value at the entire thing, we can break them down into smaller chunks and make it a little bit easier to tackle. He also talks a lot about prioritizing time. He has a quote that I really enjoy. He says, we cannot make time, we can only take time. And so that's another thing, figuring out what is important to you and what you really need to do can help you take time for the things that matter instead of trying to make time for everything that you have on your to-do list. And so doing this and keeping up with everything in your bullet journal can help you form habits of updating this mental inventory, ridding yourself of distractions, and overall being more productive throughout the day. So another quote that I really appreciate of Ryder Carroll's is, an easy place to start with any endeavor is simply taking your thoughts out of your head and organizing them on paper. And really that's the heart of what bullet journaling is helping kind of control all of the chaos that happens throughout the day and dumping it somewhere that you can actually organize your thoughts that way. So how can bullet journaling be helpful specifically for ADHD? I would say the number one reason that it can be helpful for people with ADHD is because it has an extremely flexible structure. Like I said, it's an empty journal or notebook, so you have the freedom of a regular notebook with the stability of a planner. And bullet journals don't have the same predictability and consistency of other traditional planners that you would buy on the market. So you're not I guess, trapped in the rigid structure of a planner, but you still have those elements involved that will help you stay structured. It's also one place to organize all of your thoughts. You don't need a million post-it notes around your desk or different notebooks here and there. With the bullet journal, you can keep all of it in one place and use your index to know where to reference things, which can be really helpful. And then you also have simple but supportive basic elements that help keep you organized. So I'm going to go a little bit into greater depth about each of these elements, but basically a bullet journal has a symbol key, an index, future, monthly, and daily logs, and then a migration technique that helps you, again, kind of prioritize what tasks are important and weed through tasks that aren't as necessary or that don't really matter. So the first aspect of a bullet journal, and probably the most basic, is just the symbol key. Like I said, bullet journals are basically a collection of bullet lists of things that you need to do throughout the day. So this symbol key helps you keep track of the tasks, events, and notes and know what these symbols mean. On the right, I have screenshots that were taken from bulletjournal.com. So this like pinky purple font is what Ryder Carroll uses to explain the bullet journal. So for him, he uses the bullet dots as tasks, and as he completes them, we'll put an X on them. And then he has the right and left arrows to kind of help him visualize the migration technique that I'll explain here in a few minutes. And then he also does open circles to mark events and the dash bullets to symbolize notes. I also shared a photo that I took of my own personal key for my bullet journal, and I do very similar things. I think the only thing that's really different between the way that I do it and the original bullet journal way is I like to fill in my circle when I complete an event. It just helps me keep track of things that I've done throughout the day. But again, that's, I feel like, a really good example of how the bullet journaling system has things in place that give you guidance and structure, but it's all highly customizable, and you can personalize it however you want. But this symbol key is pretty straightforward, and having it helps you kind of, I guess, understand what your symbols mean later on. Another huge part of bullet journaling is the index. This is extremely helpful in locating the content in your bullet journal, especially because a single bullet journal can serve the purpose of 8 different journals if you wanted it to. So keeping an updated index helps you know where you can find things in your journal. Again, writer Carroll's example, he has his future log on pages 1 through 4. Looks like he was working on a Blue Co logo where he did research notes on pages 11 and 12 and then sketches from pages 13 to 22. So again, you can just kind of write whatever you want in your journal and then go back and make sure you track it in the index. On the left, this is another screenshot that I took of a YouTube video about bullet journaling, and this girl wanted to doodle on page 9, and she also wanted to doodle on page 23, so she just wrote that in her index and used those pages for whatever her purpose was. So again, pretty straightforward and simple, but a really important aspect of bullet journaling that helps keep everything organized so you know where to reference things. Another super helpful aspect of bullet journaling is the future log. So its purpose is to track and log events and tasks that you need to do outside of the current month. So your future log will go after your index, and it serves as somewhat of a time machine. So you can view outlines of the future and what needs to be done. So again, on the right, writer Carroll writes a few different tasks that he had for April. Looks like he had to pick, or he had a flight in April, those types of things. And then I also shared a slightly more creative way of laying out a future log. It has an overview of the dates of the month and where they align with the days of the week. That's personally how I like to set up my future log, just so that way if I'm planning a doctor's appointment or something, I can look at what day of the week a date falls on. So that makes a little bit more sense for me. But there are lots of ways that you can structure these. And this is really helpful when you're setting up your months. You can look back on what have I planned for this month already and what do I need to make sure stays on my radar. So then when you're going and setting up a new month, you have a monthly log, which just shows a bird's eye view of what tasks and events are scheduled for that month. Writer Carroll's original bullet journaling method has a list of all of the dates and the days of the week on the left side of the page that has big events that are scheduled throughout the month. And then on the right side of the page, he has a running task list, which I think is super helpful. And so that way, when you're setting up a month, you can look at your future log and say, oh yeah, I have a doctor's appointment this day, or these are things that I really wanted to make sure that I got done in February, and you can add that to your monthly log. It's just a slightly narrower scope of how to view what you need to do. And again, I shared another type of monthly log on the left that is kind of more of a traditional planner type of calendar. So you can format them as more of a calendar or a logging list like writer Carroll does, whatever works best for you. I know a lot of people who have done traditional planners in the past and are really against them because they don't work for them. So they don't use the traditional planner calendars in their bullet journal, and that's what works for them. For me, I prefer the squares that are in a typical calendar, but like I said, there are lots of different ways to do it to make it personalized to you. And then looking even more granularly, we have daily logs. So those are the day-to-day to-do lists and note keepers that you have. Writer Carroll's example, he goes day by day. So he would only fill out Wednesday's to-do list and events. And then at the end of the day on Wednesday, he might think about what he had to do the next day and start writing those out. And he says that he really likes that way because some days you might have a full page of to-do lists and things that you need that are on your schedule. And then the next day you might not have anything to do. So you might not need a to-do list for that day. So that's what works best for him. I prefer to do more of a weekly log, which kind of looks more like the picture on the left, just because I like to plan out my weeks a little bit more in advance. But again, this is just the bullet list for the daily tasks and events. Pretty straightforward. And then one of the, I think, special parts of bullet journaling is the migration technique that's part of it. And migration just helps you move and reprioritize incomplete tasks. So at the end of the day or at the end of the month, when you look at your monthly log task list, you would look at the tasks that are still incomplete and ask yourself, is this still worth my time? Is this vital? Does this matter? And if neither of those questions is a yes, then I probably don't need to do it. And so for migration, you would look at one of your tasks that you didn't complete. So for example, in Ryder Carroll's log right here, it looks like he did not call Lee like he was supposed to. And if it still needs to be done in the short term, you would put a right arrow on it and schedule it for the next day. Or if it's something that is not as important to you, then you would put a left arrow on it, like right here. And then you would put it back in your future log to plan for a different day. So again, it kind of helps you think about, does this need to be done in the short term? Can I do this in a little bit longer term because it's not important to me right now? Or is it not important at all and I'm just going to cross it off of my list in general? And I think this migration technique really forces you to sit down and reflect on what is on your to-do list. What are you not completing and why are you not completing it? Is it because you were too busy for that day? Is it because it's not that important to you? Is it because it doesn't need to be done right away? And kind of helps you, again, weed out potential distractions or reasons why you may not be doing something, if that makes sense. And then finally, I think kind of the extra part of bullet journaling are the collections and trackers. Which just organize related information and can be created for almost anything. Ryder Carroll here has an example. He does a food log collection because it looks like he's trying to track what he eats. He also has a shopping list on the other page. So again, this kind of helps minimize the amount of random notebooks that you need if you know that on your next blank page, you can write out your shopping list or your list of Christmas gifts that you want or whatever. I put an example here of playlists. This person listed out some of their favorite songs at the moment. So you can just open up your bullet journal to your next blank page, start writing out whatever list or tracker you want and make sure that gets added to your index. I know I like keeping a habit tracker. Recently, since we've been in quarantine, I've been trying to practice yoga every day, make sure I do my dishes every day, those types of things. And keeping a habit tracker for me helps keep me a little bit more accountable. So that's another popular addition to bullet journaling. But again, these are extremely customizable and you can really make a list or collection of whatever you want. Which I think is a cool part of bullet journaling because in traditional planners, there's not a blank page wherever you want that you can just make a list of whatever or those types of things. So I think the collection and tracker aspect of bullet journaling adds to that freedom and flexibility that I was talking about before. So again, there are a lot of connections with bullet journaling and people who have ADHD. I mentioned that Ryder Carroll was diagnosed when he was a kid. He wrote a really beautiful piece on the bulletjournal.com blog not too long ago called Inside ADHD. And he speaks about his experience with the disorder. And he makes a metaphor that he feels like he's trying to catch the rain. He feels like he's standing outside and there's a storm coming and he's trying to catch each little individual raindrop as the storm just keeps getting worse and worse. And that's, that was a metaphor for him and his thoughts because he was saying that it's not that he can't focus on something, it's that he tries to focus on too many things at once and it can get really overwhelming for him. And he uses bullet journaling to make his challenges with ADHD and focusing on too many things a little bit more manageable by parsing down what he focuses on every day. I can't really see this quote, the videos are on it, but I did put this quote. The bulletjournal.com does an ADHD awareness month feature every year where they ask people who bullet journal who have ADHD to share their experience with the method and how it's helped them. And I thought this girl had a really nice quote about how the bullet journal is an amazing tool that helps her manage her ADHD. She says that it will help you remember and complete tasks and keep track of extra ideas and thoughts. And yeah, she says that if you struggle with ADHD, then starting a bullet journal can be important to keep it under control, which I obviously agree with because that's why I'm speaking with you all tonight. And then I also wanted to mention Jessica McCabe is, I believe, how you pronounce her last name. She is a very popular YouTuber, and she has a channel called How to ADHD. She has several different videos that talk about her experience with bullet journaling, explaining the technique, giving her own tutorials. And she also actually interviews Ryder Carroll, and they kind of share their experiences with ADHD and kind of relate to each other on that. I would highly recommend checking that out if you're interested as well. So Jessica McCabe from How to ADHD has a video where she talks about some of her tips for bullet journaling when you have ADHD. So I kind of borrow some of her tips on this slide and also talk about a few of my own. If you're interested in starting a bullet journal, I have 10 quick tips. 1 and 2 kind of go together, and that would be to start with the basics. A lot of times people want to start bullet journaling and they get a little bit overwhelmed because there are so many cool things that you can do with it. So at first, start with those basic elements that I outlined. Again, bulletjournal.com has a really great handout where it kind of lists it out for you and puts it in black and white of how you can start and how you can make it work for you, and then add more features as you go. Especially with social media and how popular it is, there are lots of ideas of how you can add things to your bullet journal and make it really cool. But at first, I would say start with the basics and then kind of add as you get comfortable with it. Also, keep it simple and easy to use. I know sometimes, even for myself, I'll add 10 different habit trackers because I want to start all of these positive habits, and it's really hard to keep up with. So, you know, sometimes it's a lot more manageable to just keep it simple and keep in mind the whole purpose of bullet journaling is to focus on those task lists and what you need to get done and what's most important to you. Another tip that Jessica and myself both have is to mess it up and not take it too seriously. I know that a lot of times, especially teenagers, when they make a journal or make anything, they have a little bit of that perfectionist mindset and want to make sure that it looks gorgeous. And that can be like a little unnecessary pressure that we put on ourselves sometimes. So don't take it too seriously. Also, make sure you know where to find it and you keep it close. A bullet journal is not going to be very helpful if you misplace it or don't bring it to places with you. So for me, if I'm not actively writing in my bullet journal, I keep it in my backpack because my backpack's a little bit easier to find, and my backpack is basically like my purse. I take it everywhere with me. But I think having a special place for it is really important. And also be prepared to lose it. You probably shouldn't be keeping sensitive identifying information like credit card information or an address or anything like that, just in case you do lose it. But that's important. Also, set a time for it. Ryder Carroll suggests that you take 5 minutes in the morning to kind of set out your day and list everything that you need to do, and then also take 5 minutes in the evening to kind of reflect on everything that you completed and didn't complete and kind of can do that migration process. And I would very much piggyback off of that. I think that's really important, especially when you're just starting and you're not really used to bullet journaling. Setting a time for it and creating that habit can be really helpful. Also, keep your tasks short and objective. I would say, especially if you're listing out things that you don't necessarily want to do, but you know that you need to do, if you keep it short, sweet, and simple, then you have more of a chance to get it done. If you're explaining all of what you need to do and how overwhelming it is, then again, it might not be the most encouraging to get started. So keep your description of your tasks short and simple. Also, I would highly recommend to find opportunities to improve. Really take that time in your reflection when you're migrating to think about, why is it that I'm not completing these tasks? What kind of things can I do instead tomorrow to put myself in a better position to succeed? How can I use this bullet journaling as a tool to not only make myself more productive, but help myself improve in as many ways as I can? And then number 9 would be to get inspired. I think it's more fun, even if you're not into the artsy side of things and doing calligraphy like I shared in this picture, getting inspired to just add fun lists to your bullet journal, or make it something where it's not just a book that you open up to tell you what to do and all of the obligations you have for the day, but it's also something that you can go to for things that you enjoy, and personalize it to you that way. And then finally, make it fit your needs and wants. The main point of a bullet journal is that it has the flexibility to kind of ebb and flow with what you need from it. And so don't get too worked up about making it look like anybody else's or anything like that. I think customization is what really makes bullet journals successful. So I also wanted to talk about some challenges that are associated, because no system is perfect and the bullet journal system is no different. There are things that make it a little difficult sometimes. Something that people say is, what if you still need to use a digital calendar? And I think that's totally fair. Like I was talking about earlier, we live in a digital world. But Ryder Carroll actually suggests that you can use the bullet journal system to kind of ground yourself and offload notes, thoughts, and dates during the day, and then go back to your digital system, whether it's Outlook or Google Calendar or whatever, and schedule through that digital system. And I do the same thing. Like I mentioned, I use my bullet journal for work a lot. And so I'll use it for my meeting notes, and writing out things that I need to schedule, but then I'll go back on my Microsoft Outlook and do it that way. I think they can definitely be used in tandem and complement each other. What if you don't have your bullet journal with you? And that can get kind of difficult. There's actually an app for that. Like there's an app for everything now. Ryder Carroll created a bullet journal app that acts as an extension of your journal. It's not a replacement, but it helps you, because if you don't have your journal and you would want to be writing things in it, you can go on the app and make notes to put in your future log or to put in certain collections you have, whatever. And then it's actually funny, the app will prompt you every once in a while to make sure that you offload all of those notes that you have in the app into your bullet journal, because it'll delete after 48 hours. So it really forces you to use it as not a replacement for your journal, but just an extension. Also, another digital complementary product, I haven't used it myself, but Evernote, I've heard good things about. And Evernote is an app where you can take pictures of any sort of notebook, but obviously your bullet journal as well, and keep a digital copy of that too. So, if you left your bullet journal at home and you need it for work, or you need to access a certain page, you can go on Evernote and look up that page. Like I said, I haven't used that, but I probably should, because it seems like it could be super helpful. And I like to use Post-it notes if I don't have my bullet journal with me, especially because, they're super small and sticky and I can just put it right in my bullet journal. I don't have to rewrite anything. So that's another way, like tool that you can use if you find yourself, unfortunately, without your bullet journal. And then finally, what if you have this bullet journal, you're keeping your lists, you plan out all of your tasks, but you're still not getting things done? And this information, advice I got from Ryder Carroll himself. He does a lot of talks about productivity and everything. And so he has a few tips if you're not getting things done and you struggle with motivation. One of them being, put the things that you're least interested in first in your day. Because although it can be really hard to get those things started, once you get that done, you can go the rest of your day doing whatever you want, or other things that you need to do that are not as daunting. So try to do those things that you're least interested in doing first. Also, break up your overwhelming tasks into more actionable steps or chunks. I do this a lot to help me stay productive when I'm feeling a little bit unmotivated, or when I have big things on my plate. If I'm working on a paper and I know that it has to be a 30-page paper, I'll make sure that instead of putting on my bullet journal list, write your paper, that's super intimidating. So instead, I'll make a to-do list for myself that looks more like plan out what resources you're going to use for the research for your paper, or sit down and write an outline for your introduction, those types of things that makes it a little bit more manageable. But my main take home or stay at home message that I want to give to you guys is find what works for you. Like I said, the bullet journaling system is fantastic, mainly because it can be so flexible and really work for you. Use those kind of basic key elements that I outlined to get yourself started, but let your bullet journal evolve with you and what works best for you and your schedule and the things that you have to do. And I think that is all that I have for you. I went ahead and shared a few references. Like I said, I got a lot of my information from bulletjournal.com. I also used How to ADHD, Big Think, and TED Talks YouTube channels. Ryder Carroll did a TED Talk for Yale in 2017 that's really great. That I would highly recommend. It's on YouTube. And then all of my photos, besides the one that I took of my own journal, I got from the Bullet Journal Instagram account. So does anybody have any questions or comments about the information that I presented this evening? No questions or things to share?
Oh, thought I unmuted everybody, but I did not. It looks like there was a button to unmute all. It looked like it did, but everybody should be able to unmute themselves at the bottom if they have a question, or they could use the chat box at the bottom. I will say I have listened to this talk twice and very much appreciate it. I still have not started the bullet journaling. I think I would like be lost in it and use it as a distraction. So I'm hesitant to start something like that, but
yeah, I think that's quite common, and why 2 of my 10 tips were to keep it simple, especially at first, because with all the popularity that the bullet journal has gained, and a lot of it on social media is very artistic and calligraphy and things that can kind of sometimes be a distraction. So I think that can be challenging for sure. But I feel like if this technique is something that you really need, if there's other planning techniques that are working for you, then great. But if those aren't working for you and you need to start something new, I think kind of keeping it as close to Ryder Carroll's example at first is the best way to kind of get the most productive use out of it. And then if you want to add some of those fun things to it, then you can. I will be totally honest, the calligraphy and like artistic stuff has become one of my favorite hobbies. I definitely do that. But I think because I started in more of the meat and bones of what the bullet journal's purpose was, I still get a lot of productivity, and it helps me a lot that way. I kind of call it my most fun and functional hobby.
Can you get bullet journals that have the calendar with it, like the square calendar with it, or is it 2 separate things you'd have to get?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So the bullet journal itself, so you can get bullet journals a lot of different places. The bulletjournal.com has one that they sell. There's also a lot on Amazon. And the typical bullet journal layout doesn't have those calendars, like the more traditional calendars with the squares. But a lot of the bullet journals that you can get online do have pages that are already numbered for you. They do have like an index that's kind of already laid out those types of things. And those are the journals that I like to use the best. But a lot of traditional planners have kind of picked up on the speed that bullet journaling popularity has gotten. And so there are more traditional planners on the market that kind of take some of the aspects of bullet journaling and also will add certain prompts that help with productivity and those types of things. So if you don't have the time or interest to write out the boxes, but that's a technique that works well for you, I think there are other notebooks that are planners that might not necessarily fit under the bullet journal definition, but have similar functions. And like I said, I don't use those, so I'm not as familiar with the names of those companies, but some of the companies like on Amazon that I use are like Scribbles That Matter is a good one that's pretty cheap that has like a bullet journaling layout. Archer and Olive is another good one. But I feel like if you go to Home Goods, TJ Maxx, those types of things online and like look up journaling or stationary things, there are slightly more structured versions of bullet journals available. I don't know if that answers your question.
It did. Thank you.
Okay, great.
There was one question in the chat box about if this would be available by recorded session. I did record it, so if I have permission, I'll get that to be able to post on our website.
Yeah, you definitely have my permission. Yeah.
All right.
And also, if you're interested in learning more, like I said, I would highly, highly recommend those YouTube channels that I mentioned. Jessica McCabe, I don't know if that's how you pronounce McCabe, but her How to ADHD videos with bullet journaling are super helpful.
Her site in general is fantastic.
It really is. It's super informational, but also still very entertaining. I enjoy her channel a lot.
Any other questions? All right, well, I want to thank Madeline for her time presenting and preparing and all of that. It's fantastic, and hopefully everyone can get motivated to get organized and figure out a system that works for them.
Absolutely. I'm super happy to be invited back again. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I hope this inspired a few of you to get started. I know it helps me, and I'm sure it would help you too.
Very good. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.